This is Rebel Rose and Rich Bergeron.
Tony Benico. And Psychic Tom Petty. Crystal Ball Red Hot. Ready to go.
You're predicting a good fight, Mr. Padgett.
And we didn't.
What's that?
I said, are you predicting a good, clean fight tonight?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're going to rock, and I'm predicting good sportsmanship and both guys getting their hand raised at the end.
Well, I know we haven't promoted this as much as I'd like, but we will afterwards because I know from experience that the first time was so great. And we didn't get a chance to do a show last week because I was at Thomas Rhett, standing there for 5 hours, ruining my back with our friend. Oh, yeah, it was bad. But anyway, so we missed the show last week, so we didn't get to preview Canelo versus Triple G. I would have predicted Triple G winning by unanimous decision, which I thought was going to happen, but no, Canelo got the win. But we'll chat about that in a minute. I do want to introduce the main event of our show tonight before we go any further. It's starting at 9 o'clock, which is about a half hour from now. We're going to have John Scully versus Ken Shamrock, the rematch of the MMA versus boxing debate. I believe it's over 10 years ago today now.
2007, because I wasn't even the co-host yet. Right. Rich, by the way, Mr. Scully just commented, or he replied to a comment that I put on his Facebook page, and he's 28 minutes and counting.
He's ready. He's been training for this. He's been training.
I put on there, the Iceman is wearing and ready to go. He's 28 minutes and count.
Awesome. Well, I just hope we got... I know Ken Shamrock has a Skype account, and then I just added his phone number and it connected to a Skype account, so I don't know. Hopefully that works. Hopefully I got the right one in here. But,
no, you have Tom Shamrock impersonation.
But he's scheduled for 9, so he's probably got a tight schedule. He's probably wondering, who the heck is calling me? It's not time yet. And my number comes up real screwy, so I have to try a couple times in a row to get him at night anyway, but we'll get him.
If something doesn't work out, Iceman will be flipping.
Yeah. I'll figure it out. I always do.
I know.
But we definitely have Scully there. That's for sure. Anyway, just so everybody knows, if you haven't heard of these two for some reason, if you've been hiding in a cave somewhere, Ken Shamrock, known as the world's dangerous man, he's 28-17 with 2 draws in MMA, and who knows what his wrestling record is. Station. I mean, that's probably not been recorded too many places, but he's been around the block a few times, fought some legends, beat some legends, had some pretty amazing times in the cage. So we'll talk to him about that briefly, and then we're going to get right into these questions where we break down, what's the better sport, and this is two fighters.
One thing I was going to ask you, are you going to serve as like the host, or do you want each of us asking one of those questions, or are you just going to be kind of the moderator?
Well, I was thinking we got the list. Why don't we just alternate? Or you just, if you like a couple of them, you pick them now.
I think we're all fine. I mean, you could sit there. I have the list in front of me. You could say, okay, I'm going to ask the first question. Tony, I know you want to pop in a question too, and then I'll just go right down the list. Right. Then you can say, hey, Tom, you want to do the next question, and Tom can pop in a question. Hey, we'll
do it that way then. But yeah, John Scully, 38-11 with 21 knockouts, and fought at world-class level. So, 2 great fighters, and we're gonna see. We're gonna see if the rematch is anything like the original, which unfortunately I have not located a tape of. But there's still hope. I have not checked my old computer.
Yep, and we know we've got 2 old-school warriors. Anyone, anytime, anywhere. Neither one of these 2 guys ever showed up out of shape. Neither one of these 2 guys ever ducked anyone. Neither one of these 2 guys ever gave less than 100%. So this is going to be great.
And the thing is, Tom, one thing you did say, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Both very much old school guys. Old And I know they both have, strong, feelings, with their own personal opinions. But these are two guys that always did their sport, their respective sports service. And, and when you go back there, very, very knowledgeable guys. So, and like I said, obviously, because I communicate with him often on Facebook, is Iceman Scully, who has a wonderful sense of humor. A lot of the stuff that he posts on there, very humorous, but at the same time, he always gives a lot of anecdotes with stories. So it's like, hey, anybody can talk about fighting in the amateurs and going to a show or, doing something with professional and doing this and doing that. But he talks about a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Taking a group of kids on an amateur show or an amateur tournament, and some of the shenanigans. There's one picture of him in midstream shooting Chad Dawson with a super soaker when Dawson was like 14 years old. Great little things that people don't know, and that's one of the things about Scully that I like the most is you really get a behind-the-scenes picture of what the sport is like with him.
Yeah, exactly, because I was watching some of his videos, and especially the sparring session with Roy Jones, and it's some idiot in the comment section, well, they were just playing around. Oh, yeah. Like Roy Jones Jr. is going to play around, even in sparring.
Right.
Come on. And there's just so many other questions, like as far as how these guys handle these keyboard warriors. But, one I'd like to ask probably both of them, but Ken in particular, would be about instant replays. Because if you remember Ken's last fight, it was very controversial. And I know things in both sports happen quick. And when the fight is decided, if the referee honestly misses something, well, we'll see. I'd like to see what they have to say about that. It'd be pretty interesting. And it'd be fun to talk to John about Iceman, about why boxing is no longer the water cooler sport that it was, back in the 60s, even through the 80s and 90s. So I'd like to get his comments on it, too.
Feel free to watch a few tangents. I'm sure when both of these guys get into it, they're not going to be like, on any fresh time limit, but I'll try to moderate and just cut people off.
Yeah, so like I said, I love your questions, and there's a few more of these I'd like to try to get into. So,
when the conversation allows, feel free. But I think we're on a tight time limit with Ken, because he is a celebrity now.
Right.
He's a very famous man. He's traveling the world. He's also, I think, trying to do some business deals, to use his marketing capacity to, get behind some businesses and see if he can benefit himself and have a nice retirement. The one fight I know he wants, according to his website, is to do the final rematch of the Horse Gracie one and settle that once and for all, because there was obviously some shenanigans there in the last one.
Well, he has every right. I mean, he was very honest about the first one. He wasn't ready for what Royce was bringing with the gi and the choke that Royce put on him. But the second fight was a draw. Royce kind of got the worst of it, but they agreed to it. But that third one with that knee that the referee didn't give Ken time to recover. Yeah, it's unfinished business. So
right.
And again, I think that if we have instant replay, that would have changed the outcome of that fight right there. That's why I hate to bring up a painful topic to him, but facts are facts, and I think that could have prevented that.
Yes. Well, 20 minutes and counting here. Well, 19.
I guess we should do a recap of last week then.
Yes, before we get on with them, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin, Triple G. And I really thought Triple G, obviously he landed the more punches, we saw that in the stats, but really he landed more head punches, and he had way more control of the final rounds. I thought Canelo looked good in the early rounds a couple times. He threw way more body shots. I think Triple G kind of forgot to change levels for a little while, and he just got to headhunting because he was just so pissed. I think he was a little bit angry about the whole PED situation, and he just wanted to headhunt. He wanted to take him out. I think he really wanted a knockout, but just didn't have the power to do it. And Canelo was defending very well.
8 body shots. In the first fight, they showed the tracker. He only landed 8 body shots over 12 rounds in the first fight.
Right. And he paid for it too, though. You know, you look at Canelo's face compared to Gennady, and all that headhunting he paid for. He did take a lot of headshots himself. All around his eyes were swollen, and it was definitely a close fight. But I just don't think Canelo did enough to win. I was watching the British feed, and the British guys were pretty pissed because they were agreeing with Harold Letterman, I guess, who had it for Triple G. And you can't really complain about the judges this time because both parties had a big hand in picking which judges were going to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, here's what I was going to say, and I judged the fight myself. I know, Rich, you commented on my Facebook at night, and you seemed like you were pissed off because it's a highway robbery. And I didn't think it was a highway robbery. I did score for Triple G. I remember watching the fight. I watched it with my dad and one trainee, Matt. He came over to watch it with us. And into the first round, which Triple G lands a lot of jabs, I turned to him, I said, Canelo gets that round. And they're like, are you serious? I'm like, on the judge's card, he will get that round. And Letterman had it 8-4, 116-112. I personally had it 7-5 for Golovkin. There was an early round that I gave to, I forget who I gave it to, but it could have been either way. So that either way for me, that swings it into a draw. There were some other close rounds with an ebb and flow where one guy would do well early, the other guy would pick it up late. So it's like, did the first, say, minute 20, which fighter A dominated, overset the left, say, minute 5, where fighter B dominated, with that 20-second interval in the middle being kind of like a wash. Yeah. So I said, it all depends. Do they remember what happened at the beginning, what happened at the end? So I personally had it 7-5 Triple J. I wouldn't argue 6-6 because that one round that was really close early that I shaded to, I believe, Triple J. And I said, and honestly, with some of the rounds close, I could see an argument for 7-5 Canelo. But one thing I did say, and I said this to my friend Matt, and I also said it to a friend of mine at the gym tonight, it goes in with a simple prejudice in the mind of the judges. And all of us as fight fans, we go in there expecting to see something. So go in there and let's look. I'm going to give a fighter from the past, Smokin' Joe Frazier. Tom, what's the first thing you think of when you think of a Smokin' Joe Frazier fight?
Wow, here comes an oncoming train. Watch that left hook. He's bobbing and weaving. He's moving forward. He is a predator. He is going to hunt you down. You are his prey.
Now imagine Smokin' Joe's in a fight, and he's up against, a real tough but pretty slow guy. Strong, physical, but the guy has no footwork. And this one time, Joe actually starts using his jab. Joe's not coming forward. Joe's using his jab. Joe's landing some left hooks, but Joe's landing some straight right hands too. Joe's not going to the body. This other guy is bringing the fight to Smokin' Joe. But the problem is, he's maybe not landing as many punches, but in your mind, you're thinking Joe Frazier is losing because this guy is coming to Joe Frazier. But when you look at it and you count the numbers, well, Joe Frazier landed more punches. Joe Frazier technically landed some good headshots in there. But in your mind, this guy won because Joe wasn't trained. And I remember that happened to me one time. I was fighting, and I remember fighting the guy, and the decision was real close, and I lost. I forget if it was unanimous or split, but I talked to the one judge, and I was like, yeah. I said, wow. He goes, well, you seem like you're off your game tonight. I said, well, how so? He's like, well, you were more on the outside, and you were circling, you were using your jab a lot, and you were counter-punching. I said, okay. I said, that was kind of what I planned to do in this fight. He goes, yeah, but that's not your style. I said, do I have to go in there and make it a pissing contest every time? And he kept saying, he goes, yeah, but you're like more of like a pressure guy. You're more of a brawler. I'm like, but was I landing punches? Yes. I said, I countering his jab? Yes. Was I landing my left hook? Yes. Then why did you have it against me? Well, because I'm used to you going forward. So he had a preconceived notion in that fight that for me to win, I had to be the pressure fighter. But
that's very subjective.
Card. So you figure Triple G in that fight, the first few rounds, he moved backwards. So for these judges going in there with the mindset of Triple G being a destroyer, I think Canelo's neutralizing him because Canelo's the one putting pressure on, right? So that could influence judges.
I thought Canelo was more aggressive, but I don't think he was aggressive enough to win the fight. He was like defensively aggressive in a weird way in the early rounds. And really, the only risks he was taking were to throw body shots. And the only way I could see it being scored in his, some of those rounds scored in his favor is that, maybe Triple G winced more in those rounds, and made the judges think he was hurt more. I mean, you could argue that way.
Right.
But to me, Triple G had the pure boxing. He scored way better shots. He took a lot of punishment because he headhunted. But if he had changed levels a little bit earlier, it would have been no doubt in the judgment. It would have been unanimous.
Tony, what you just did is you gave me one of those, why didn't I think of that moments. I mean, what you said was just bang. I mean, right there. Wow. That is so true, because I'm trying to think. I would think the same thing. If Smoking Joe changes his style, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? That's not him. I mean, you shouldn't. You know how he does it, and that was just so right on the money. And I guess my point now, to be fair, I was at my 50th reunion of my high school class. Okay, so I missed everything. Long story on that, but we're going to talk about that. But the whole thing is, why would we know before the fight that if it's close and if there's any controversy, why would we know what direction it's going to go in? Why? Why do we know that?
Right.
Money. And then De La Hoya sending out that idiotic letter like he's a sore winner. I mean, it's bad enough to be a sore loser, but he's a sore winner. Dude, you just won. Your guy's unbeatable in Las Vegas. He can't be knocked out. He can't lose a decision. Now you can line him up against whatever you want for the next couple of years, and maybe give Triple G a fight 3 years down the road. Why are you angry? Why? I couldn't understand that letter. My God, it's almost like someone just won the lottery and they're complaining. Well, I only got $300 million. I need $400 million. Dude, shut up. Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was on up and up or if anybody got paid behind the scenes, but I do believe it's possible. I mean, just because the Nevada State Athletic Commission approves these judges doesn't mean that, somebody can't come to their house in the middle of the night and drop an envelope with funds.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, but I don't think it's that blatant. No. I think that it's almost like an intuitive thing that if they want to keep working, they know that there's far more Mexicans come to these fights than there are Kazakhstanians. I just made that one up. I know that's what you call them. But it's almost like if you want to be a journalist on MSNBC, they don't have to tell you got to attack Donald Trump. You don't have to tell you that.
Yeah.
That's what you just know that they don't read you a script. You know what you have to do if you want to keep working.
Right.
And I think we're looking at where there's a lot of unsaid stuff there. You know what's expected. Yeah, you know what's expected.
Right.
So I mean that's my take. I don't think it's anything as crude as a blatant bribe or anything like that. I don't think they have to do that. But I mean, who knows for sure? But and this is and the fact that the Nevada State Athletic Commission has been under suspicion for this kind of corruption, for forever.
Right.
So it's almost, in my mind, they're always on probation. And here we get another example of it. Now, to be fair, I didn't see it like you guys did, but I trust your judgment, and I would say that on the forums, probably a minimum of 2/3 of the commentators and the people commenting on the forums felt just like you guys do. Was it a good fight? Yes. Was it an exciting fight? Yes. Did both guys go for it? Yes, they did. But the overwhelming majority, 2/3, maybe even 3/4, felt Triple G pulled it off.
You're right.
Yeah. The whole rule too of you got to take it from the champion. I mean, I've never seen a more defensive fighter winning like that. I thought obviously he did throw a lot more punches than we thought he was gonna. He definitely landed some nice body shots, but I just really don't think he had the aggression that everybody thought he did. Just because, maybe 30 seconds in the beginning he showed some, and he landed a few punches here and there. But I thought Triple G had him hurt more often than not. And the Triple G's only mistake in that fight was headhunting. If I had to pick apart his style, that would be the only thing I could say he made a mistake on. On Canelo's part, I would say he wasn't active enough throughout the whole fight to really get that decision. He had the right idea. He was active in spurts, and he threw more body shots, but he also didn't really stay in the pocket when he needed to. He got right back out, and he wasted a lot of time running and staying at distance, and then that gave Canelo room to headhunt well at a lot of times. So I really thought that he controlled more rounds. I was listening to the arguments that the UK judges were given, and they were right along the lines with Harold Letterman too, who scores fights pretty well. But for some reason, the judges at the fight start differently. And again, that's for
some reason.
Yeah, to me, that's also
what a shock. I was shocked, honestly shocked.
Whether it's an unspoken nudge, you should do this for the betterment of your career, or whether it's just their vantage point. I don't know. I think when you're watching it on TV, you have the best vantage point, and I wish they would have the judges allowed to see in between round replays, and just raw replays of the footage, or give them a television monitor for when they have an obstructed view. They can check that out. I just think they need more resources to see these fights better, because when you're sitting there on a big stool watching through the ropes, you might be right there, but you're going to see different angles than the cameras are
showing. Right. We've talked about that. Maybe just get them up on elevated platforms like a big tilt-a-whirl and move them around.
Like that thing at the amusement park where you're in the chair with the chains on it.
Yeah. And the fact that Oscar felt so compelled to write that letter, it's almost like when a guy takes a good punch and looks at his opponent and smiles. Well, that's kind of silly. Normally what that means, you did hurt me, but I got to tell you, that didn't hurt. Really? Why not be stoic about it and ignore it?
Right.
Just ignore it. And the fact is that this is hit a nerve with Oscar. I mean, I couldn't believe that. Well, that's why I had to forward it to you guys. I was like, I can't believe I'm reading this. I never heard of anything like this. Oh, I'm telling you, it's just and the problem is this really helping boxing? This kind of stuff, this kind of controversy that goes on and on, and so many of the comments online were, "This is why I left boxing 15, 20 years ago because of stuff like this."
Right.
And I don't know if there's any truth, because there's no consequence for anything. So,
well, I'll tell you, before we talk about anything else, I did want to just quickly talk about some of the other fights on the card. And this was the first time I've ever seen a pay-per-view card start at 8 p.m. So I missed the first fight, because I ordered it around, they usually do a pre-show starting at 8:30. I'm like, yeah, okay, pre-show, whatever. And I'm like, I put it on to start for the second fight. And I'm like, oh shit, I missed a fight. And that was, Facalito. And I know he had a brutal knockout win. That was pretty vicious. All three undercard fights ended early. Then the second one was David Lemieux winning the Canelo sweepstakes. It looked like that fight's going to happen now in December. But David Lemieux, like O'Sullivan, with that massive left hook in the first round. And that was one where there was a lot of bad blood going into the fight. A lot of, guys really not liking each other too much. And Lemieux landed that big left hook, and Sullivan went down and got up. He was bleeding out of his nose pretty good. And the referee stopped it before he even got up. And at first I was like, because O'Sullivan's back was to me, I was like, oh, that's early. Then he turned around and got a view of his face, and later on, nobody was home. And so they stopped the fight, and I can agree with that stopping. Just looking at O'Sullivan's face, And I remember I was on a Facebook post later, and someone's like, "Oh, you think that was a premature stoppage?" I'm like, "Man, from the shot that he got hit with and looking at his eyes, he would have been in danger. I mean, it is part of the sport. Maybe the referee could let him go continued if he would have gotten up and responded, just giving him a very short leash. But somebody made the comment and said that left hook landed so hard it straightened his mustache out." And then we had Jaime Munguia, once again weighed in at 154, stepped into the ring at like 175. Just a massive dude for a junior middleweight. And they even talked about things they can do now that they're trying to implement for fighters, not to put on that much weight between fights. But his fight also ended relatively early. I think it was like third or fourth round. And then you have like an hour plus wait, for the main event. It was an enjoyable card. There were good fights. It was like that.
Funny part was the Brits showed the entire first fight while waiting for the second fight. What are they doing? I guess they're just waiting. That was funny. Showed the entire one. But anyway, yeah. It was a great card all around. Obviously, they're going to make this Canelo versus Lemieux fight. I do believe that's going to be a mismatch. But obviously,
that old cliche about the puncher's chance. But what does that really mean? One guy's outclassed. Of course, everyone has a puncher's chance. Right. There we go. And I'm sure De La Hoya will complain if the pay-per-views aren't enough of that. No, we'll have to focus on better things.
All right. I'll try to get our guests on here. Also, we had... oh, here we go.
Hello.
Hello, Ken.
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much. We're just connecting with John here. Get ready for this big debate. Do you remember the first one?
I do, yes.
All right.
Yeah. Man, how them women taking off, man. They've been marquee, making a lot of money.
Hey.
They sure ain't pretty to watch, but they sure are exciting.
Right, exactly. John, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Ken got the first shot in while you were waiting.
I'll probably lose the battle, but at least I got one.
Anyway, just to introduce you guys, John is a pro boxer, trainer, 38-11 record. Ken Shamrock, obviously, world's dangerous man, a WWE career, also 28-17 in MMA. And I'm just going to give you guys a brief introduction period. Start with you, Ken. Just talk about your biggest career highlights and what you bring to this debate here tonight. Go ahead, Ken.
Oh, okay. I'd like to say, I was at the right place at the right time. Had some talents. Definitely loved fighting. Got the opportunity to go to Japan and fight up there and train up there, and especially before it was ever seen here in the United States. So it was a great opportunity to go up there. Actually captured the very first belt, mixed martial arts belt, in Japan. That was a real highlight for me. It was a 2-day tournament, 16-man. I won that. Then about 2.5 years later, I got to get the UFC. A little bit different because instead of mixed martial arts, it was no holds barred. Anything goes, bare knuckle. And I was able to be the first super fight or single fight. There was only 2 weight classes. There was really no weight classes because everybody fought everybody. And I was able to capture the first belt, the single fight belt. So all belts go through that. So those are really 2 of my highlights that I was very proud of. The next one that I think I was very happy to do was being able to bridge the gap between the entertainment world and the no holds barred MMA world, which was WWF and the MMA circuit. Being able to go over there, caught a lot of heat in the beginning. Everybody thought it was a sellout. Made that transition, and now we see people doing it all the time. So I was really happy to be able to be the first one to do that, be able to bridge that gap, and be able to let athletes know that they don't have to be stuck with one thing, that they can train in a lot of different areas, being able to have fun and still be athletic.
That's awesome. Now, John, give us a little rundown of your career.
Well, I started boxing as a kid. I idolized Muhammad Ali, and started my boxing career right around the time when Mark Breland was the premier amateur in the United States. So amateur boxing was very, very big back then. So I went professional. I went amateur, with my goal of being one of the best in the United States. I didn't really even think about the world at the time. Like, the United States was the superpower along with Cuba and Russia. So I was just trying to excel here, and I ended up making the Olympic trials. I went to three different national tournaments. I beat the world champion, and I beat the number 2 ranked guy. It was actually Otis Grant, who ended up being the WBO middleweight champion as pro. I went to the semifinals. I won a bronze medal in the Olympic trials in '88. So I turned pro right after that, and I assume most people, even though I fought for the IBF world title, I fought over in Germany. So I think most people who know me as a boxer, I think they know me from my fight with Michael Nunn. It was bigger here in the United States, and it was a good fight. And as luck would have it, I'm actually in touch with Michael Nunn on a very regular basis now. I assume he's in federal prison. He'll be getting out at the end of this year. So I've managed to maintain that, and now I train fighters. I've trained a few world champions and top-ranked contenders, and I'm also active in helping fighters like, for example, Joe McClellan and Wilfred Benitez, who are in need now. They're in bad condition physically from fighting. So I do different things to raise money to help those guys. And I also do amateur boxing reunions, which I have one coming up on the 29th of this month in Los Angeles with, I've got guys like Alex Ramos and Lamont Brewster and Paul Banky and guys like that who are going to be attending. So, I'm keeping busy in the sport. I'm always going to be involved in one way or another.
Oh, geez, I gotta ask you what you're not doing. That's Anyway, our very first question, I'm going to let you start off, John, and then we're going to alternate. Ken's going to start next time. I believe you guys have copies of these anyway, so you've had some time to think about it. But boxing and MMA, obviously they're at constant odds for market share in the audience, but a lot of the athletes have been drawn back and forth with each other, trying to prove which sport's better than the other. What's your personal argument on why your sport's the best?
Just me. This is just me personally. Like, I've tried to watch a few MMA events, and when they fight from a distance, which is very similar to boxing, even with the kicks, it's interesting. You can see the punches land or the kicks land clearly, but once they get on the ground and it's the wrestling and thing, me personally, I just get kind of turned off. It's not interesting. Maybe if I knew more about the actual technique and what they're actually trying to accomplish, but I prefer to see more sustained action. Where there's not lulls in it. Something like I was watching one fight. I actually I gave it a try, and I watched this fight, and they were on the ground. And they were on the ground for like a couple minutes. It seemed like 2 minutes straight, and they were one guy, he had the guy kind of locked up, but he wasn't down or whatever the term is. So he was still in the game, and he's holding them, and so they're holding each other. They're almost like stuck in place, and so nothing happened to the naked eye for like 2 minutes, and so I was kind of done with it after that.
So what makes your sport better?
Well, you're talking me or him?
You gotta kind of finish it. You
right. Well, I'm saying, like, with the boxing, and I remember even last time we had this discussion, and I brought this up. I was saying, like,
like Mickey Ward and Gaddy and Corrales and Castillo. You know, the type of fights where these guys are coming back from almost being knocked out. You know, like they're just about to be knocked out, and the way they can come back and punch their way back into it. Because, you know, I guess the ultimate difference for me is that, you know, in the MMA, they can hold for a long time. Like in boxing, you get hit and hurt, you hold for a couple seconds, and they're going to force you to break. Whereas in the MMA, you know, you get hurt and you're dizzy. I guess you can hold a little longer and clear your head. You know, and these guys, you know, Gaddy and Ward, you know, you watch Gaddy when Arturo went down from that body shot. If you were to freeze framed that spot and say, what do you think is going to happen? I guarantee 100 out of 100 people would say, no way he gets up from that, and no way he makes it through the round. And not only did he get up, but he came back and almost knocked Mickey out, and then Mickey almost knocked him out again at the end of the round. Like, that all happened in a 3-minute span. And I guess, you know, so that's my thing. I think the action is more sustained. From what I see, it's more sustained and it's more visual. You know, visually, it's more sustained from what I've seen. So that's just my personal opinion. Why I like it better.
All right, Ken. I know you're raring to go with that one. Let's see. What do you think about that?
Well, it's listen. This thing's been going on ever since UFC came into existence. And I think that we missed the boat is that, you know, they're both competitive fighting and that they're both different, even though they're in the fighting arena. But they're just way different. I mean, if you try to put boxer in MMA, he's going to get squashed, which they have. You put an MMA fighter in a boxing ring, and he's going to get squashed, which he has. So they're different, right? And it's really, I think, in a fan's perspective, it's really more about what you like. I mean, if you like boxing, old core, you know, most people who are a little bit older in their 40s and 50s are hardcore boxing fans because they grew up with it. Kids that are in their, you know, from the time they're 15 until they're probably in their 30s and 40s now, grew up watching MMA. And it was because MMA at that time intrigued and was interesting to people because they saw boxing as being limited. Like, for instance, when you get into a boxing match, the only thing you can do is throw punches. In MMA, or no holds barred, you can kick, you can elbow, you can throw, you can take people down, you can do submissions, you can elbow on the ground, you can strike on the ground. There's so many variables to winning that fight that it became so interesting to the fans because it wasn't a one-dimensional fight. And I think that's why it took over market shares. That's why it rose to that level it was at, because it was more exciting. I remember going to a fight one time. There was a mixture of boxing, kickboxing, and MMA. And MMA made boxing look slow. And it made kickboxing look slow because there was so much time in between punches. You see a flurry of punches. And I'm a boxing fan, so I love boxing. And I do love boxing. And I really saw the difference in action. And it was obvious to me because I competed in both, Muay Thai and also, you know, MMA. So I knew the both of them, and I knew that in my own heart that it's a much faster and much better and exciting thing to watch because the submissions can happen anywhere, knockouts can happen anywhere, whether it's with an elbow, a punch, kick, or a knee. And so it just seemed to me like there was so many ways for people to watch a fight and be excited. Now, it took 5 years for people to get educated to the submissions because I got booed the first time I heel hooked a stand-up fighter, which was Patrick Smith. And when he was screaming and yelling, they started throwing beer at me and cussing at me, saying it was fake. So it took a while for people to catch on, but once they did, you could see the difference if you put them side by side, and you could see the difference in the excitement in the fights and how much faster MMA is when you put them together. Now, with that being said, is MMA and boxing you're ever going to see that come together? I think we are. I think we're seeing it. You're seeing MMA and boxing guys embrace each other. You see Mayweather and McGregor get in there and fight, And I thought, Mayweather carried McGregor because he sat in the pocket and he didn't move like he used to. He made it a fight. Most people said, it was a great fight. McGregor did good. And I just laughed because I watched Mayweather, and that guy is a skilled fighter. McGregor would have never been able to hit him with 3 jabs in a row if they were fighting. I thought they put on a good show. Nobody knew that it was a exhibition, but that's what it was. McGregor wouldn't have lasted 2 rounds or 3 rounds, even though Mayweather can't hit hard. He'd have hit it with so many punches, McGregor would have woke up thinking he was getting hit. So I get it, right? But I do believe it's happening, and I believe if you want to make a living in this combative world, especially the kids that are younger and coming up, learn the submissions, learn the MMA, and learn boxing. So you have multiple places you can go compete. So you say you got a boxer who's really good, and he's learned wrestling, learn how to defend takedowns, so that he can go into an MMA match and be able to knock people out without having to go to the ground because his defense is so good. You look at Chuck Liddell. He was an average striker, and he rose to the top of MMA because nobody can strike that well as a boxer. Yeah. And he was an average guy at best. McGregor is average at best at boxing. So MMA is definitely open for boxers to come in and succeed if they're willing to put in the work at a young age to defend takedowns. And they have that good hands to walk in there. I think that there's a huge opening there for that to happen if somebody wants to put the work in. I think if Mike Tyson would ever learn how to defend somebody, a takedown, man, he'd have been on top. I just see so many opportunities there. I see MMA guys being able to really train their hands at a young age. By the time they're 5 years old, 10 years old, when they start in MMA, really start focusing on striking and really being able to fight in MMA and also fight in boxing. I see that coming, and I see that's the future. I really believe it is, and I think because the money's not there, it is there, but the promoters are all taking it themselves. And
I think you already see with the women. The women have actually come over from boxing to MMA more frequently than men lately because there's not enough money for the women in boxing. So they've, Anna Juliton is one of them. There's the other one, Heather Hardy. And she's going back to boxing to face her arch nemesis there, Shelley Vincent, and they had a controversial decision the last time, so she's going back to boxing for that. But she had one tough fight so far against a kickboxer, but she's done all right in Bellator.
Let me ask you this: I think it's happening, and I think it's going to be. That's the future. Is I think boxers and MMA fighters are going to both.
Yeah.
My question is this. I'm just curious. I honestly don't know. But I talk to, in the gyms, I run across MMA guys, and I'm just like, why? MMA is a big sport. Like, why don't the guys? Are the promoters taking the bulk of the money? Like they don't pay that well, or what is it? Like, how come there's no guys making, huge money like a Mayweather does?
Well, here's the reason why on that is because when the Fertittas came in and they bought the company, it was a private company, independent company. They didn't have to show the books. Like when I went in to negotiate my pay, I had to go off what they told me. I couldn't get the numbers. I couldn't see other than pay-per-view. But as far as the house, how many people in there, the merchandise that's being sold, and even the numbers on pay-per-view, you got to go find out yourself. And sometimes you don't get the international ones. You don't get all the other stuff that's happening with the actual marketing, the promotions, all the things that go behind that. You don't get to see the real numbers. And so for a fighter to go in and say, listen, I want to get 3 points, and I want 3 points on the whole deal. You can't really get that. I first found out because I brought the points in from WWF into the fight, and I brought that in when I fought Tito. I got educated on it. I brought it in. I told him I'd take it on the column. I only want this much up front. I took a huge cut because I knew what I could do on the pay-per-view. When they came back to me, they lied to me on the numbers, and I couldn't find out until a year later that I got screwed.
Right. Yeah, that's the Fertittas for you. I could write a book about those guys. But, somehow they got $4.2 billion out of it.
Right. But it wasn't making money.
No, it's not worth that either. What really started even being worth $1 billion was a Forbes article, and the Forbes article said it was worth maybe $1 billion. And then the price just went up from there because Dana White kept saying, "Oh, it's worth what anybody will pay for it." really. So they paid, unfortunately, $4.2 billion. I think that just makes it harder for the athletes to end up with the money at the end, because now they're worried about paying their investors back the whole time.
That's the problem right now. It was that you didn't get to negotiate from a fair standpoint. Now it's because they got to make their money back.
Right. But you guys got a little ahead of us. We're going to have Tony read the next question.
Okay, hey guys. My next question, and we touched about this a little bit in your previous answer, but both boxing and MMA suffer from payment issues for lower-tiered fighters, while the headliners typically do very well financially. What do you think can be done to change the reality where some fighters end up paying out of their own pocket for all their expenses and then make very little for themselves at the end of the day?
Well, I don't know where you got your information from, but top-tier fighters don't make a good living. Obviously, they make more money than the lower-tier guys, not even close. But here's the problem. Let's say you go into a fight, and the company makes $100 million or over $100 million on a pay-per-view. And that top-tier guy that fought in the main event gets $1.5 million. Is that fair? Is that fair?
Right.
It's not.
No.
So I know what you're saying as far as guys making that money, and that they make a good living, but it's not a fair living. Because you're figuring they're not even getting 1% of what they're bringing in. It's robbery, because these guys now, especially the guys that are on top, now they're only going to be there, especially in MMA. I don't know about boxing. I think boxing maybe a little bit longer. But in MMA, you got 3 to 5 years being on pay-per-view. If you're lucky, you get 5 years. On the fringe, it's probably 3, maybe 2.5 years, 3 years in between there, that you'll be in that position to be able to get that pay-per-view numbers. Because it changes so fast. The guys are always coming up and getting better. So you only have that amount of time to make enough money to be retired. And $1.5 million, maybe 1 or 2 times, is not enough money to live for 30 to 40 years after that. Not into a lifestyle you're accustomed to living. Most people would say, oh, that's a lot of money. Well, if you take in the accountability of the training, the trainers, everybody has to get paid, and they get paid more the higher up you go because of their professionalism, and you get the best. You want the best trainers, you want the best cooks, you want the best of everything so that you can stay on top. And so it does rack up. And so when you talk about a lifetime after that, you look at factoring in $1 million or $1.5 million for 30 to 40 years. You have to make some investments, and you have to hope that money lasts you. And with taxes and everything that's coming around, that just drains really fast. And you can't go out and get another job. I mean, now you're a face. You can't go and work somewhere. People recognize you. So it's a difficult situation when you look at what's being paid out as opposed to what's being made. To me, it's robbery. It's really bad. And as far as the lower tier guys, anybody that gets on pay-per-view, whether it's the first fight or the last fight, should be making good money. The opening guys should be making at least $500,000 to $1 million if they're on pay-per-view. With the numbers that are being brought in, with the money being brought in, that is about what they should be making. And so to me, when you look at the way that those numbers are all split up, the fighters are getting hosed every single time.
Well, I understand in the UFC, they do the fight bonuses and stuff like that. Why don't they do a separate one for the undercard or the preliminaries? Because those guys never get that opportunity to win that bonus, unless they absolutely floor the entire crowd and produce the best fight of the century. Those guys never get the bonus. It's always the main card. And some of those guys, those bonuses change their lives, or at least they think it's gonna, But $50,000 is a lot of money to some of these people. And either give more of those bonuses across the board, or make some for just the preliminaries and make some for the main event. That's one way to fix it, but I mean, how else do you fix it? That's the problem. Everybody can point out why it's a problem, but how do you fix it?
Well, unless you can come around and actually do what a lot of the big four sports do, which is get a union and have everybody get together and make sure the athletes are treated fair, and the owners get to meet, make sure everything's done straight across the board. But that's never going to happen because now you're talking about 4 or 5 guys that are on top. I wouldn't ask them to stop fighting and stand with us because, that's a lot of money you're asking somebody to walk away from, and it's just not going to work. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. What's going to happen, and here's my closing thought on that, is that a fighter, whether it's myself or somebody else, but I'm in the process of doing something big, and in the next 6 months to a year, it will be announced. But here's what's going to happen. It's going to take a fighter to open an organization up, to start a fight league, and then do the pay-per-views, bring in a top talent, and be partners with the guys that are on the fight card, that everybody that's on that card from the opening fight to the last fight gets percentages of the pay-per-view.
Right. Good one. That's the wave of the future, I think. And I do believe there is a lot more competition popping up, and even Golden Boy is trying to go out there and say he's going to pay these guys a lot better than they're being paid. So we'll see if it helps on the long run. But John, your turn on this one.
Yes, sir. Well, repeat the question so I have it fresh in my head.
What do we do about this reality that some of the lower tier fighters can't really make a living, and they're paying for their own expenses, and they really can't, keep it going? Although, you do see some guys have 144 or more losses, and they still fight every week. But
Right. It's a tough spot. I'll tell you one thing that they, in a related aspect. When I fought in Germany, and I know they do it in England, they do it in different places, and they don't do it here. And they actually tried it a few years ago. If you remember, goldenpalace.com. Do you remember that? The guys would have on their backs.
Right.
You remember that? And they were and they shut it down. Now, when I went to Germany for one of my fights overseas, I made as much with advertisements as I did for the fight. I made double. Basically, I got 2 purses. I got the fight purse, and I got the advertising. I advertised an energy drink. I advertised a sporting clothes line, and I went to a mall, and I signed autographs, and I made great money doing this. They don't do that here. They don't. You never see guys here with Coca-Cola on their shorts or whatever company. I think they don't allow it. I think they don't allow it. That's the only thing I can think of. But I remember Golden Palace. These guys were making, as I recall, they were getting $10,000 a fight. You give a guy $10,000 a fight. All he's got to do is have this, Golden Palace on, and they shut it down because there was no way for them to take money from it.
Right.
Which I think is
well, the UFC did
really
the same thing.
indicative.
The UFC did the same thing with their Reebok deal.
And did they shut it down? They shut it down?
They made it impossible for anybody to wear any other logo but Reebok on their shorts.
Can you imagine? That's crazy. And I'll tell you a funny thing. A guy like, if you remember Scotty Pemberton, I know you guys remember him, Scotty. Scotty was a tough. Like his fight with Omar Shika, both fights were every bit as good, in my opinion, especially the second fight. Every bit as good as Gaddy and Ward. They just weren't as famous. But the fight was like I was literally in the front row for the second fight, and I'm just sitting there. I could not believe it. I was 5-7 feet from the ring, elevated. I could not believe what a fight it was. They made nothing, and I started training Scotty after that when he fought Jeff Lacey. He said he got $100,000 to fight Jeff Lacey. And he was #1 contender. He had just come off 2 Fight of the Year on ESPN with Omar. He never made more than $10,000 up to that point. He was #1 contender in the world fighting Jeff Lacey. His biggest payday was $10,000. Now that's before taxes, before expenses.
Right.
So a guy like Scotty could have made more than double that if they would have allowed him, sponsorship opportunities. But he took the fight. Now here was the mentality that guys get. He told me, he said, listen, he goes, the title doesn't mean anything to me. He goes, at this point, the money, I need to buy a house. I need to put it down pay him a house. He said if they offered me $100,000 that I'm getting to fight Jeff for the IBF title, or if they offered me $300,000 to fight Roy Jones just in a non-title fight, I would take the beating from Roy and the money any day of the week. He goes, I don't care about the title. I want the money. You know, and a lot of guys, you know, that's the fact of the matter. Like, I was different. When I boxed, I honestly can say it, and I know people don't believe me, but I'm telling you, I didn't care about the money. I didn't care. Like, I just loved to box. It didn't make a difference to me, you know. But I know guys, this is their job. They don't love boxing at all. They don't love boxing. They don't go to the gym when they're not fighting. They're boxing to make money, and they're limited in their opportunities. Like I say, guys in England, I know these guys personally. I know I'm friends with a lot of them. They do the sponsorship. They get their stuff. They got 6 different patches on their trunks when they fight. They get paid from each one. Right. These promoters in America, they're not going for that. So they're limiting the way these guys make money.
Well, it's a key point, too, and the reason why a lot of the UFC guys at the end of their contract now are going over to Bellator, because Bellator will allow you to have your own sponsors on your shorts still.
Right.
And they also allow you to go and do a boxing match if you want. You know, the UFC won't allow you to do that unless they're promoting it, like they did with McGregor. You know, so it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's like a real sticking point for the whole contract situation between the major competition for the UFC and the UFC. You know,
right.
That's awesome. But our next question, we're gonna send it to Psychic Tom. He might read your fortune while he's at it.
Gotta be careful. We have a Leo and an Aquarian here. Okay, so we do a little bit of an improv on this one, Rich. Hope you don't mind.
Sure.
And first off, I'd just like to tell both you guys, this is such a pleasure, such an honor, and just a privilege to talk to you. I've been a fan of both of you for, going back forever. And I look at you guys as old school pros. And I mean that as a compliment. I think neither one of you ever showed up out of shape. Your attitude was anyone, anytime, anywhere. You didn't duck anyone. And I'll say this much. Anyone that's getting in the ring of the cage with 1, 2, either one of you guys, they better be ready for a fight, okay? And what else could you ask? And, John, I remember that nun fight. It had to be frustrating fighting a guy with that skill. Your determination there. I mean, you may come up short on the decision, but you got to stand with me on that one. Never mind that scary and stuff. Alfonso Bailey. That was all business right there. And Ken, going back to the early days, I always talk about you being a pioneer. I missed UFC 1, but a friend of mine had it recorded, and we were watching UFC 2, and he said, "Man, you got to see this UFC 1. This guy won this fight with something called the heel hook." And I said, "Man, what's a heel hook?" And he said, "No, you got to see it, man." And there it was. I was hooked. A little play on words there, But if you remember, the Ultimate 95, you were commentating there. And they had the Mike Tyson fight on that night, so they delayed, and we had an hour of Secrets to the Octagon. That's going back a bit, huh?
Right.
Oh, man, so I had to get that. It cost me a relationship. I'm waking up with my girlfriend at 2 in the morning. Hey, I need your leg. She said, what? And I was just watching this, okay? I'm learning how to do a heel hook, the toe, so this goes back. So this is, just so fabulous talking to you guys, But my question for both of you, and especially Ken, because I know there's been a few fights where the referee has been the factor. And I don't know if these are honest mistakes or just overlooking or something else, but I'd like to know what both of you would think about the possibility of having instant replay in these sports, because to be fair to the officials, things move fast. And if you get a low blow, you get thumbed in the eye, and the referee doesn't catch it, and stopping the fight and saying it's over, you're done, maybe an instant replay could change that around a bit. And if you guys would like to weigh in on that, I'd love to hear it.
Right. So let me start. I'll tell you 2 incidents when it would have been very applicable. There was a fight. This is a lesser boxer fight. It wasn't a world title, but Otis Grant and Bo James years ago. They fought a 10-rounder at Foxwoods, and Otis went down like a flash knockdown, which it would surprise me. And they took you lose a point, and I was sitting ringside. I was right behind the television, the replay, and the announcers were watching the replay. And I'm like, man, he missed him. He didn't even hit him. And the announcer told me, he whispered to me, he didn't even touch him. And I said, man, Otis loses a point there because the referee missed it. He didn't realize the guy caught him. But on a bigger scale, Kovalev Andre Ward fight. Now, granted, I had Andre Ward coming on, and it looked to me like he was going to stop Kovalev anyway. But he was in that round at the very end. If you remember, he stopped him. He hit him low, and the referee immediately stopped it because Sergey looked like he was about to quit, like he showed weakness, And I don't know if the guy thought it was a body shot or what, but clearly you can see that he hit him low. So he basically got stopped on a low blow, which if you showed the replay, they would have seen that was the case. So there are definitely 100% opportunities in situations where the instant replay could definitely be used 100%.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you have an athlete who puts in that kind of training, puts their body on the line, and goes in and competes at this high level in sport, one of the most dangerous sports to compete in, you want to make sure that the referees are getting all the help they can get to get it right. I was in my 50s. I was 51 and I was 52. I fought Kimbo Slice when I was 51. I was going to do 2 more fights, and then I was going to call it a career. But the 2 fights I had in mind was Kimbo Slice, because he was the most popular at the time, and then finish off with Hoist Gracie to settle that score. And so I go in to fight Kimbo Slice, and I take him down. I put him in a choke. And, of course, obviously I'm a little bit softer than I was when I was younger, I wanted to show sportsmanship. I wanted to show class because I was moving into a different genre, more of the business world when I was done fighting. So I wanted to win the fight, but I wanted to win it in a classy way. And so there was a lot of talk going on, and I remember John saying, listen, I don't want you guys going over trying to hurt each other. And so when I put the choke on him, I put it on, and he literally goes out. He taps, and then he goes out. I feel him go out. And so I let go of the choke. Now, I don't get up because John hasn't stepped in yet, but I let go of the choke. And so he taps 2 times in front on the mat, and then once behind my leg. And so I ease up on the choke. Well, John doesn't come in to stop it. He doesn't see it, right? Because they were real small taps. But I see it, and I know he's out. So I let go. Well, he ends up coming to, and then as John's saying fight, I'm like, dude, he always getting ready to yell at John, man, he taps. He pops up. He puts his chin down, he pops up. Well, I slide off of him. Now, I'm 51 years old. I got bad knees. I don't scramble as well as I used to. I only got 1 chance to finish this, and I know I'm good enough to do that. And so I did what I was supposed to do, but yet the referee doesn't see it. So I slide off. I go to get up, and he catches me with a punch. Now, even with the punch, Don steps in and stops the fight because he thinks he's protecting me because I'm older. Now, I wasn't out. I wasn't unconscious. He steps in fast. So 2 different times there where I felt like, whoa, wait a minute. I did my job. How come you didn't do yours? Nevertheless, he goes into the press conference, and I remember the first question to Kimbo was, hey, man, you put the choke on. He had you. What happened? What happened? He says, man, I don't know, man. I went out. I went, oh, my goodness. He went to the press conference and basically told him that he went out, and I was just trying to be a sportsman, right? If it was 10 years ago, I'd have broke his neck, right? I mean, I was in that competition mode. I wanted to be the best. No one was going to stop me. But just a different mindset. I go and I take the Hoist Gracie fight later after that. Luckily, I get it. I get the Hoist. Now, they put a boxing referee in this fight, right? It's in, Dallas, Texas. And so the boxing commission gets involved, and they say, well, we're going to use boxing referees. And I was like, okay, no problem. So we get into the fight, and I remember We went out hoist, slowing him down, cutting off the ring, and I hit him a few times. We ended up in a clinch, and I hit him with an uppercut and knee, and then he literally throws a knee to my groin. And in my opinion, he did it on purpose because we're both pros. When you're clinched like that, you don't stray like that unless you do it on purpose.
And that was hard, buddy. That was a straight, hard, I felt that one at home.
Yeah, it took the wind. I mean, it took me a minute because I was trying to fight the pain. People go, why did it take so long to react? Well, because I didn't want to show that he hit me. I was trying to fight it, and then pretty soon I just couldn't breathe. And so I turned and moved away from him, and Hoist grabs me and takes me to the ground, and as he's taking me to the ground, I'm trying to push my cup down. And the referee's going, fight, are you okay? Fight, you give up. And I'm looking at him, I said, man, he hit me in the nuts, let me fix my cup. And so he ends up stopping the fight. And I said, okay, cool. So I go to get up, and all of a sudden I see him going, okay, so come to the center ring. Dude, what are you doing? And he ends up raising his hand, and I looked at him, and I said, he hit me in the groin, dude. What was that? And literally he said, and then when they showed the replay, the whole audience booed because it was a clear shot to the nuts. Now, here's the thing. The referee's on purpose, especially a boxing referee, man. It's hard enough just with boxing, right? It's hard enough with just an MMA referee going in there and doing an MMA show. It's different, man. So he was on the wrong side, wasn't in the right position to be able to see that low blow he hit. And so if you had replay, those two fights would have been overturned. And to me, that's why I think that because I put a lot of work into that, my whole career was based on it. The end of my career, to put a period at the end of it, I had it all set up. And it was going to ride off into the sunset. I knew I could win the fights. And, lo and behold, both of them in a row, two different times where the referee had missed the call, blatant as all can be, but just, to me, that's where I think that instant replay could really be effective, especially when you're talking about guys that are actually fighting for ranking positions in order to get that title shot. Could obviously take away their opportunity to have that lifetime experience.
But think about it. Even if you're not, it's an obscenity. I mean, I know how hard it is just from my little amateur career, how much you've got to train. Put your heart and soul into this stuff. I mean, this isn't like a hobby. Nobody plays fighting. You play other games. And I know, Ken, that you're a sportsman because after UFC 1, you just admitted, yeah, there was a little trick I didn't know, but then you came back, UFC 5, and we seen what you could do there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I lost one, and after that, they couldn't beat me. So you can learn from those experiences. But again, like I said, I really believe that the instant replay is an effective tool to get it right.
Right. Yeah, because it's not like you want to win by cheating or anything like that. It's just what happened. You should have had 5 minutes right there. Or if you needed 5 minutes. You might not have, but you should have had that opportunity. And it's just so, it's heartbreaking to me because it's unfinished business. It's just wrong, period. But I'm glad you guys agree with me on that. I mean, I kind of thought you would, but yeah, good to hear that from guys with your experience level. Thank you so much.
Good transition point. I know you guys don't agree on this one, I don't think, unless things have changed. What do you think about this, the whole scene for women? Obviously, we talked a little bit about this earlier with a couple of the boxing women coming over to MMA. I know this is where it erupted a little bit last time. But let's start with Ken. What do you think about women in the sport of MMA, and how do you get them more attention and better paydays? Ken? Still with us? Ken? Ken? You lose him? Oh, yeah, we lost him. All right, John.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about women in boxing? And
well,
what do we do?
I mean, I tell you, I'm on both sides of the fence in this regard. I trained a female world champion, Elizabeth Mueller. I have to say, she was one of the most hardest working boxers I've ever been with. She was fearless. She did everything I said. She was, willing to learn, willing to try anything, a trainer's dream. I can't say anything negative whatsoever. But in the grand scheme of things, I say this: women just simply don't have. Not that they don't have the skill necessarily, but they don't have the physicality to execute like a man would. They just don't. Like, I've never seen anyone, even Ann Wolf and different ones. They're good for women. They're very good, obviously, but they've never been able to execute. Like a man. And me, I'm the type of this guy. I always tell this story. I say, when I was a kid, when I was about 19, I went to see a UConn basketball game and at the Hart Pacific Center, and they were, Patrick Ewing was playing for Georgetown then, and Cliff Robinson was playing for UConn, Tate George, and they're good. Like, I'm watching them, I'm going, wow, these guys are really good. This is exciting. These guys are good. And then a couple months later, I went to see the Celtics against the Hawks in the same arena, and I was like, one quarter into the game, I'm like, man, these guys are so much better than the college guys. Like, why do people watch college? Why don't they just watch these guys? Like, if you want to see basketball and you want to, other than if you know the people personally, if that's your son or something, but in terms of competitive and skilled basketball, why don't you just watch NBA? And, so that's always been kind of been my philosophy. And so a woman fight, you can have the two great women fighting, but it's not going to match up to De La Hoya or Roy Jones or Floyd Mayweather. It's just not. So, and a lot of people disagree with me, and they're advocates for women boxing, which is fine. I have no problem with women being on a show. That's no problem. We talked about the fight you guys mentioned, Heather Hardy and Shalito Vincent. Which was a great fight. It was a good competitive fight. It was an action fight. So, but with that being said, I don't believe at all. If people advocate for female boxing, so okay, that's fine. But if you're going to say, what if there was a show with just women boxers? Seven bouts, 14 women, seven bouts, 14 women fighting against each other. And then you advertise it, you say, okay, there's no men on the show, it's just women. I don't care what anybody says. People aren't going. Bingo. They're not going. They're not going. Period. And they can say they love women's boxing. They're not going. If there's a pay-per-view, and this is the thing. This all they got to do is test it out. Have a show with 3 pay-per-view fights, all women, and put it on a Saturday night, and see what they draw. See how many people pay to see it. It's not going to be comparable to men. I'll tell you that much. So that's my only issue, is that the interest rightfully isn't there, because if you want to see competitive, highly skilled boxing, and if you want to see power, because the one thing the women don't have really is the power. You don't see a woman yet who could do a Tommy Hearns, who could knock somebody out, with one punch and they go to sleep. You don't see that on very rarely, and it's not one woman who's doing it to a whole bunch of people like Tommy did and like Golovkin did. So, the interest is with the men. So just the way I see it.
All right, I'm still working on trying to get Ken back.
So in other words, John, we could say let the market decide. Correct?
Right. That's all. That's all I'm saying with anything. The market does decide. Like if you want to throw it out there and test it out. And I'm pretty sure where the chips are going to fall.
Right. Makes sense to me.
All right. Let's try that. Well, obviously you changed it a little bit on that perspective, Sean. Last time was pretty crazy at that point. But anyway. Working on trying to get Ken back. I don't know what happened with that. I don't know if he was just allotted for a certain amount of time or what. But about halfway through our questions. Anyway, we did kind of touch on a lot of the other stuff during our other questions, unions and stuff like that. But the big question for me is like Ken was talking about earlier, John. How do these sports work together? That was the whole purpose of the debate. You know, getting different people from the different sports to talk to each other and figure out more ways of how do you work together. I mean, what in your eyes do the MMA people have to do to really get more boxing fans like you to watch, other than stop rolling around on the ground?
Right. Well, you know, I mean, here's my thing. I just think it's two different sports, and you know what I find is I don't see a lot of guys I know personally who watch both, who are adamant about both. I just think it's two different sports, and they both have their fan base. You know, and so I think they should just focus on their fans and drawing new fans, not from boxing, not trying to take them away from another sport, but from developing newer fans, you know, on their own. Because I don't see a lot of people really adamant about both of them.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this, John. BJ Flores came up with a good answer to that, because there was one card where there was going to be boxing, and then the next one was MMA, and they were asking him if he thought it could work, and he thought it could. He says fight fans want action, and if the cards are exciting, there could be some crossover.
Right. Yeah. I mean, above all else, I think casual fans, or you know, not really diehard fans, you could sell a mixed show. You could have 3 pro boxing and 3 MMA, something like that. I think that could sell in a certain market, and there's a fan base that would get it. But I think there's guys like me who I'm like, I've never been to one. I've never had an interest in going to a show that has like 2 karate fights, 2 MMA fights, 2 wrestling fights, and 2 boxing fights. You know, I've seen them advertised. When I lived in Florida, they used to do that a lot. I forget the name of the organization, but they did those shows quite a bit, and they had all the different fights on, you know, different styles. But like I said, I don't think you're going to be able to lure fans to switch places. You know, just straight out, you know, go and watch the others.
Right. Well, I don't know what's going on with my Skype, but can't seem to get Ken back. My cell phone. Put him on speaker. Bypass Skype. Anyway, see what's next on the list. Looking at your own career, John, are there things that, knowing what you know now, you would have done differently as far as...
Oh, man. Plenty of things. You know, my main thing has always been the manner in which I made weight, the manner in which I didn't know how to make weight. You know, I was actually in my, 77, 97. I was in my late 20s when I learned how to really make weight properly. Until then, I just did it like everybody else does, in a really negative fashion, and you know, and I damaged myself in many fights because I was so depleted, but I didn't know any other way. So, and I think, and there's a lot of guys just like me to this day that I see do not have a great knowledge of how to lose weight properly. So that's a big issue in boxing, and it was definitely a big issue with my career. So I would you know, get a better education and go back and do that over for sure.
Your party is reached.
Hopefully we can patch in. We just gotta close it out now. driving through the mountains out there or something.
4919
Crossed into Area 51.
is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options. To leave a callback number, press 5.
Hey, Ken, sorry we had to end it early, but, we did cover a lot, so thanks a lot for the interview. And hopefully we can just get you on the show again at some point and just, talk shop. But thanks a lot. We got a lot of answers. We got a lot of questions covered. And I don't know, you got any final word for him, John, before we let the message go?
I appreciate the conversation. It was interesting. It was something I learned a little bit from. So I appreciate it. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ken. All right. So, John, I guess we'll give you the opportunity to give your closing arguments. What makes boxing better? And like I said, if there's any ways you can think of how they work together.
Well, like I said, I think it's just two different sports with two different types of fan bases. So I think working together would be a big task. But like I say, for me, I think I think the results speak for themselves. Like if right now guys in boxing, not average guys, but upper tier guys, but not superstars. They're making $1 million. I don't know. I see guys making $1 million, $800,000, on a very regular basis. There's guys getting $2 million that aren't superstars, and so I think something's wrong with the business of MMA. That these guys, for a sport that's supposed to be so popular, for these guys not to be making big money. I mean, somebody's getting that money, and it's apparently not the fighters. So whatever needs to be done with that, I don't know why the guys don't speak up. Because I was talking to a friend of mine who's into MMA, and I said, what is the biggest MMA guy in the world? What does he make for an MMA fight? And I forget what he said, but I was like floored. I couldn't believe that it wasn't nearly as much as I thought it would be.
Like, most of the big fighters, unless they negotiate a crazy contract, they'll get like a maximum of $500,000 just for the fight.
Yeah, that's insane. Like I know guys in boxing who wouldn't even fight. They wouldn't fight anybody for $500,000. It had to be an insult to them. So that money is going somewhere. The money for the pay-per-view and everything it's going somewhere. Somebody's putting it in their bank account, and apparently it's not the fighters. And I just don't know why they don't unite and stand up and
well, it makes it tough in the UFC because the National Labor Relations Board has not really weighed in enough to decide whether they can legitimately call their fighters independent contractors or whether they need to reclassify them. Because right now they're listed as independent contractors, and if you know anything about employment law, it's like, it's just making their rights so much more limited than they would be if they were employees of the company. So, kind of catch-22. What do you do? You have to change that, or you have to, somehow find a way to have a union under that situation. And as much as it makes it impossible to give more rights to these fighters to have them as independent contractors, it also makes it impossible for them to unionize.
Right.
It's just such a big deal. And a lot of these companies that are trying to come together to say, all right, let's revolutionize the way we handle MMA associations, and let's get all these guys together, and let's try to have a players association for MMA. All these guys, the basis is like, let's do a lawsuit and let's get antitrust protections and all this stuff, but that takes decades sometimes to clear up through the courts. And the biggest one that's in action right now might not even be successful. So where do you go from there if it's not successful? I mean, it's just starting right back from the drawing board. And there's just not enough fighters who would join an association right now, because all the ones that have come out haven't done crap. They haven't done a single thing to help the MMA fighters. And they even had guys from baseball and stuff and other sports form one of them. And George St. Pierre, the big MMA fighter, was behind one of them. And nothing's happened.
Right. crazy.
It's crazy. You know, and the UFC dominates the picture so much, so that's part of it because they've set the tone of, you know, the organization makes money and the fighters get what we give them. And they still pressure these fighters to put on such a show so they can get this extra little bonus money, this $50,000 here and there. And that's just their way of motivating these younger guys. But MMA's always been a sport too, where they, like you said, you know, you have to do it. You have to love it. You can't do it for the money. So I think that's what's been the best in history is guys that just weren't doing it for the money. They were just doing it to pioneer the sport and make a name for themselves. But I see the same problems in boxing. We talked to Adrian Clark, who wrote a book about it, and you know how you take a boxer's $1 million and you break it down all of his expenses, and it's not $1 million. So it's
right. Yeah, people don't realize how many people at that level he's got to pay. Right. You know, and that's without taxes. You know, that's before the taxes come out. So yeah, I mean it's not as much as people think, that's for sure.
a lot of Peters and Pauls to pay, right?
Right.
All right, John. Well, it was a great talking to you, great reliving that. Obviously, it wasn't as...
Well, Rich, if I could get one more quick opinion from Don.
Sure.
I'd like to ask you this, that, you know, boxing, I mean, I grew up in the 1950s, and you know, I remember going to the bar with my dad. I was just drinking soda pop, watching the old Friday night fights, black and white. You know, it was such a big sport. The 60s, you know, Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali. In the 70s, we had so much excitement. In the 80s, was like a golden age. I mean, it was water cooler talk at the office. Everyone's wondering, you know, what about the Duran-Leonard rematch, and is Jerry Cooney going to beat Larry Holmes? And I mean, these fights were events. And then it seemed like after Tyson kind of lost it, and we went into the 2000s with the Klitschko's, you know, there's an old cliche, as the heavyweights go, so goes boxing. And the Klitschko's were great fighters, no disrespect, man, but it just seems like it's not the events that it used to be. And you know, you hear these, there's all kinds of rumors, because back in the 80s, you know, every Saturday afternoon, we had, I remember, Gil Clancy and Tim Lyon, and then NBC, Freddie Pacheco and Marv Albert, you know, there was always stuff going on then. Everyone knew, and all the divisions were exciting. Lou Mancini, you know, the welterweights were crazy, you know, Tommy Hearns, and on and on. You know where I'm going with this. And then all of a sudden, it just seems like now there's the network television. They're trying to bring it back with the PBC League. But I guess my question to you is, what do you think caused this drop, and how do you see things coming back, or if you do see things coming back?
Well, it was definitely, without a doubt, it was when they took it off of network television. I mean, back in the day, the biggest stars in the world, Sugar Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Roberto Duran, and Marvin Hagler, plus Larry Holmes, fought on NBC, CBS, and ABC on weekends for free television. So they stopped doing that. Now, a guy like, look at Mayweather's last, I mean, he had 50 pro fights. His last probably 32 fights were world championship fights. Every fight was a world championship fight. He wouldn't fight unless it was on HBO pay-per-view and it was a world championship fight. Guys aren't doing that anymore. They're not willing to take $50,000 to get a tune-up fight to keep themselves sharp and busy. Now, if it's not $1 million payday in a pay-per-view or HBO event, they're not doing it. So we're not seeing them, you know, unless we're paying for them. Whereas a guy like Sugar Leonard, he won his world title on ABC, Wireless Sports. You know what I mean? You saw him on national television, network television. So we're in a different world as far as that goes.
Now, Iceman, not his world title on network TV, his world title against a fellow all-time great on network TV, and Wilfredo Benitez.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So in other words, there may not be a way out of this mess.
I mean, not without people getting to, like, think about it. Like people think like everybody has HBO. That's not true. Like, I don't even have HBO. You know, people don't have HBO, right? You know, everybody has ABC. You know what I mean? But everybody doesn't have HBO. You know, so we knew Ray Mancini got famous because of free network television. He didn't get famous because of pay-per-view. I don't know, other than his last fight with Haugen at the end of his career, I don't think Mancini ever fought on pay-per-view. I think all his fights were... What's that?
I think his fight with Camacho was on pay-per-view in 1989.
Right, but I'm talking about like in his prime. Like that was he was at the end of his career. That was like a throwaway fight. Like I'm talking about back when he was fighting Bramble and guys like that. And it was closed circuit back then. He wasn't a pay-per-view fighter. He wasn't that level. He didn't do that until he fought Camacho in like I believe it was 89 or 90 or whatever it was. But Mancini's better years were 83, 84, 82. He won the title, I think, in 81 or 82. So he never was on that back.
But you remember, he fought Alexis Aguero in 81, and that was on network television. And it was all, free. There it is, right there.
That's what I'm saying. You know, so we saw Alexis Aguero and Boom Mancini on ABC, you know, or wherever it was. It was on CBS, I believe. They don't do that anymore. You're not going to see Mayweather fighting free TV, you know, against another top guy. So they've made it where you have to have cable TV, you have to have HBO, you have to have money for pay-per-view to see these guys. So they've limited the access of the common man to even know who they are.
Yeah, even the Contender is on some obscure channel now. It's on Epix. You know, like the Contender used to be on network TV. And they brought it back and they put it on some crazy cable channel.
Well, Don, I'm going to tell you what I remember growing up. You know, when I was, I first started watching the boxing, which was the guys you were all mentioning, because my dad was a big fan of Boom Mancini. Then I remember sitting on the side watching, Sugar Ray Leonard against Burns and Benitez and Duran, all those great fighters. We had the Marvin Hagler, all these great fights. I remember every Saturday afternoon, the week prior, when the TV guide would come, he would open it up to see what fights were going to be on next week so he could plan his weekend around them. And, as a 4 or 5, 6-year-old kid, I remember so many times sitting with them. And then years later, the series on USA, Tuesday Night Fights. What I loved about that than anything was not only did you get a lot of great fights on there every week, but it was like Al Albert and Sean O'Grady were like almost like your friend. It was like you were inviting them over into your house every week, and you knew when there was a boxing card on. It was easy. It was like clockwork. Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock. Unless they preempted it for the dog show or Wimbledon tennis. It's true, no ratings, but they did it anyway. You knew. Tonight, 9 o'clock, I get to watch boxing on USA, and I'm going to get some good fights. I'm going to get some, world-class championship fighters. Now, as much as I love some of the shows on ESPN or, FS1 or whatever they're putting on now, it's not consistent. So I know tomorrow night's Friday. Is there a chance there's going to be a fight card on one of those channels? Yes. But here's the problem. I might open the paper and say, oh, okay, there's a fight card on tonight. Great. Oh, look, it starts 10 o'clock at night. Or, oh, no, it starts at, 11 p.m. I'm like, well, by that time, I was hoping the stuff would be pretty much ending because I wanted to go to bed. I worked all day. So, but there's no consistency, and that's what hurts building an audience. Well, of course, guys are going to have a hard time following it because it's, you're building from scratch almost every time, and ratings are going to be down. While we're on that, I want to jump to another topic, and we may have even touched on this on your Facebook page a few weeks ago. The situation with the fighter walking out of the ring.
I'm curious to know what your position on this is, too.
Yeah. I mean, with your experience as a trainer, as a fighter, as a fan, what is your take on it?
Well, my thought was when I heard about it, because I didn't see it live. So when I heard about it, I said he must have just been terrified. He must have been scared. Right. But then when I watched it, it looked to me that there was some kind of protest. Like, he wanted people to see. You know, he was like, screw you, I'm gonna stick it to you. You know, you and your promotion, and I'm gonna stick it to you right now. That's what I do. That's what I thought. You know, because he saw the guy at the weigh, and he knew who he was fighting. You know, it wasn't a big secret. You know.
Yeah, there were a lot of issues. We covered this on the last show. Not only all the issues leading up to the fight with negotiations and stuff like that, but they left the guy at the airport for like 3 or 4 hours. They forgot to pick him up. I mean, this basic stupid stuff to get you just boiling by the time the fight starts. So, I mean, I would never advocate somebody doing that, but at the same time, I also had to say, you know, he did have some legitimate beefs going into this.
It's like, you know, I don't agree with it, but I understand.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And I got a couple questions for you before we let you go, John. Number one, what did you think about commentating bare knuckle boxing?
Oh, it was interesting, but I was a little like, it took me a little bit to get adjusted because, you know, I'd never seen bare knuckle. I didn't know the rules, you know, per se. And I figured, and it happened just like I figured. And I said it to somebody at the weigh, and I go, how are these guys going to fight more than one round? You know, like, how are they going to, you know, I've seen street fights and guys hit each other with their fists. You know, they're getting dizzy and hurt, but I mean, their hands are getting, you know, it hurts. And it's actually one of either the first or second fight of the night, it was almost funny. Like, the guy came out and he hit the guy, and he actually stepped back and he started shaking his hand, but he had a look on his face like when a little kid hurts himself and he's shocked by it. You know, he looked like, whoa, oh man, this is crazy. It was almost like he was trying to figure out how he was going to keep going. If that hurt, like, I don't think he wanted to hit the guy anymore. But it was definitely, you know, every fight was like I think one fight made it into the second round. So, you know, I don't know. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think they'd be better off having a not even a glove, but, you know, one of these, like those MMA, I think it's an MMA glove. It's got like you know, it covers like just your knuckles, right. You know what I mean? Because just like a knuckle flat onto a person's skull, that's literally like hitting a brick wall. There's very little difference between that and hitting a brick wall. And I don't see how these guys are going to last, you know, over a long career. Like,
well, the thing is, it seems like they just keep getting new people. Like, a lot of ex-MMA fighters are flocking to it. They just love the concept, you know, because, you know, like you probably, they didn't like the rolling around as much as they like the
right.
So it's interesting to see what happens with it. I like Damon Feldman. He's a good guy, you know, from what I've heard about him. I know he's kind of got a little controversy surrounding him. He's done the celebrity boxing, and he's had some controversy with that, some other stuff. But I think this is a legitimate deal. He really does love the sport of boxing, and he wanted to do something different. A lot of people are trying to copy him already. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Damon that was trying to put that fight card together that I was supposed to fight on in a few months, but it doesn't look like it's going to be able to go through.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, of course, what did you think? Who won, Canelo or Triple G?
When it ended and we were waiting for the decision, I thought it was going to be another draw. I literally thought they were going to say another draw. I thought Canelo, the first half of the fight, he looked good, and I think it was a big surprise to everyone. I think especially to Triple G, that the way he came forward and, you know, really didn't show the, you know, big concern for the power punching. But you know, Triple G came back and he was getting to him, and at one point, maybe around the 9th or 10th round, it looked like he had Canelo hurt very good, and could have stopped him. So yeah, it was a very good fight, you know, and especially the last couple rounds. I mean, they went for it. And I always say, I wish these guys in the last couple rounds would go for it, you know, all out. And those guys were going for it. I mean, they really wanted this victory. So it was a great fight, and the ending, you know, they pushed it right to the very end. I would have been happy with the draw, but I think, you know, eventually they'll fight again based on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Kazakhstan this time, right?
The next fight with David Lemieux, who won the Canelo sweepstakes with his knockout of Spike O'Sullivan. But I think the Republicans are going to want a third fight with Triple J.
Oh, you
I was scoring it myself, and I said before you came on tonight, I said knowing just a lot of times just talking to a lot of the judges, and sometimes they'll go in with a preconceived notion of what a fighter should do. And by Triple G, who's known as the destroyer, for the first few rounds fighting the hack using his jab, I think that left a negative impression in the first round, even though he was doing good work, because the judges were expecting it. No, Triple G's supposed to go forward. And I used a comparison. I said, imagine Smoking Joe Frazier in his prime against just another guy that's similar built, strong, physical, whatever, and Smoking Joe turns into the boxer. He's adding and he's using an angle. He's landing great counter punches. You're going to give the round to the other fighter because of the fact that he had Smoking Joe backing up, even though that was Joe's game plan. You know, Joe doesn't back up. So obviously, he backed up, he lost.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point.
All right, John. Great talking to you. Awesome debate. Wish we could have had Ken a little bit longer, but hey, he's a busy guy. I understand. And he probably was going through the mountains out there in Nevada or something. But he lost us.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
John, this has been great. This has been great. Learned a lot from you.
Hard to believe.
Thank you.
Hard to believe this has been going on 10 years we've known each other. Over 10 years.
Right, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Time is flying, especially when you get older.
Yeah. And
I know that game.
I definitely got to say, keep doing what you're doing with the USA Boxing Alumni Association. I love the fact that you're headlining that stuff and getting involved, because I know you always have been doing that stuff before they even got started.
Sir. Right. Yeah. We partnered up, and things are looking good. So I'll be doing it again in a couple weeks.
Cool.
All right.
Well, awesome catching up with you, and let's not wait 10 years to catch up again, right?
Yes, sir. Call me anytime. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
All right. Bye-bye. Yeah.
All right, so we got a lot left to cover. A lot of different stories this week, as well as events. But we're going to try to do it quickly, because I know we're already kind of running late, even though we got plenty of recording time. I don't want to have a super long, 8-hour show here, so I'm going to try to run through some of this quick. But there is so much news. Mayweather, of course, cannot stay out of the news, but now he's not in the news for MMA. He's not only talking about a sequel with Manny Pacquiao, that seems pretty definite, but he's also now talking about a fight in Japan before the Manny Pacquiao rematch. And apparently this happened because the two of them got together and actually talked in person at a fight. And now they're definitely talking about the rematch. It seems like it's going to happen. So, who knows? But Mayweather said, I know everybody heard about the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, but before the Mayweather-Pacquiao rematch, I will be back in Tokyo for a huge boxing event. Stay tuned. So, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to fight in that boxing event, or if he's just talking about promoting one. But Japan. Keep your eyes on Japan. So, that's a quick hit on that one. Speaking of big names fighting each other, this is a couple guys from other sports. Former NFL star Sean Merriman, who you might remember if you're an NFL fan. Pretty good on the defense. I believe he was a linebacker.
The linebacker for the Chargers for a lot of years.
He's open to fighting Greg Hardy, who has been mowing people down and got a UFC contract. So.
Yeah, I'm Greg Hardy's trainer, Billy Patton.
That should get pretty interesting, because, the one thing that a lot of people have been saying in both boxing and MMA is, why can't we get more football people to, choose, instead of football, to choose fighting? Now, they're built for it. They've got the size. They've got the athletic regimen, that they know how to train. So why not? So now we're going to see these guys, and even though they're a little bit older than you would want to see, these guys have had a football career, and now they're going to maybe fight each other. So I'm looking forward to seeing if that comes to fruition. And then speaking of older guys, BJ Penn coming back. He's going to face Ryan Hall at UFC 232 at the end of the year, December 29th. And I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm going to be in the camp of no. But BJ Penn had an interview recently where he says, MMA is my wife. MMA is my wife. This is my wife, he says. I love this. So, I don't know. That seems disturbing to me. Maybe he takes it a little too seriously. Here's a tough one for wrestling. A federal judge has dismissed lawsuits by dozens of former professional wrestlers who accused the WWE of failing to protect them from concussions and other head trauma, including CTE. And 53 wrestlers filed these claims, guys like Road Warrior Animal Laurinaitis and Jimmy Superfly Snuka. But the judge said they came too late, these claims, and they were frivolous. Of course, it's in Hartford, Connecticut that this judge ruled, so you can imagine there was some money behind the tax money concerns behind that decision, possibly. But the judge found no basis to suggest that the defendants, including WWE Chief Executive Officer Vince McMahon, knew of any link between wrestling and CTE before 2007, which was after most of the plaintiffs had retired. So they said the court is unwilling to find that the diagnosis of one wrestler with CTE is sufficient to imbue WWE with actual awareness of a probable link between wrestling and CTE. And of course, news of the cases being thrown out brought the stock up 2.3% to $89.74 a share on Tuesday. So that's pretty unfortunate. It sounds like a technicality. But it is one of those things that's the law is sometimes tricky, and the courtroom is the last place you want to go to find justice.
True.
So I don't know. That sucks for all those guys, but it's just another political wheel greasing, I believe. There's an interesting video circulating on MMAmania.com and probably other places. And this is a UFC-produced video, which I found very interesting. They're doing it for one of their anniversaries. And it's called Octo, the disputed origin story of the UFC Octagon. And I recommend people check this out. But one of the things that I was surprised about is they actually do recognize a guy named Kaja, who I've had communications with. And he claims to be the original to the Octagon, and used it first, and the people that created it for the UFC actually went to his event before they went to the UFC, and they put this video out, and they don't deny it, really. They're all fighting over who actually was the one that officially can be credited with creating the Octagon. But it's funny, I think it's Bob Meyrowitz is interviewed, and he talks about being at one of Kaja's fights with the Octagon, and he never says the word Octagon, but he admits to being there before the UFC Octagon was ever used or conceived. He's at an event where an Octagon is being used, and he purposely never mentions the word Octagon. But I think Kaja makes a pretty decent case for himself, even though they only give him a couple minutes. And from all the conversations I've had with him, they've really screwed him out of his invention.
Well, if this is the same guy I'm thinking of, this goes way back to the early days.
Yeah, early 90s.
Right, and he was the instructor in Kapakaluha, the art of the ancient art of Samoan bone breaking. Wow. And his star pupil was Mike Batonio. Now, this is some real trivia. And Mike Batonio was, I think, 205, 210 when he was fighting Bart Vale, who ironically became my first MMA instructor, for real, not just videos. And it was a brutal fight. Now, did you ever see that, Rich, the World Combat Championship?
No, I have not.
Okay, I'll just put you a link for that. I mean, that fight It was incredible. And Mike Petonio, and you have to see the build-up to this, the way they were marketing this stuff. Yeah, this was October of '95. And Petonio passed away, but his son became a pro football player. So, and I never heard of any of Kaja's students, so Copper Kalua never seemed to make a splash in the MMA world. Now, Mike Petonio didn't really, I didn't say anything special about it, only so many ways you can punch and kick and grapple, you know, it's a tough guy.
Right.
Tonight's trivia.
Exactly. Another story coming across the wire here. We've got Conor McGregor finally getting sued. Somebody's punishing him, or trying to. Michael Chiesa has filed a lawsuit officially claiming damage, psychological and physical harm, as well as financial harm from being prevented from fighting with an eye injury. And he's also named the venue, too, which is interesting. Didn't sue the UFC or anything, but he sued the venue. Barclays Center, BSE Global, and unnamed individuals apparently owed a duty to Chiesa to engage in proper security measures to protect him and other patrons of the subject location, and failed to do the same. That's what the exact quote is from the lawsuit. It also says the injuries sustained by Chiesa were caused by and due to the negligence, carelessness, and recklessness of the defendants. And of course, no comment from McGregor. But it's still a big surprise to me, you know. Dana White flatly said he would punish McGregor when the decision came out for the lawsuit, once the criminal was taken care of. No punishment whatsoever. Not even any discussion. I don't even think any MMA reporter out there is ballsy enough to ask him in public. You know, where is this punishment for McGregor? Will there be any from the organization? Because guys have been punished for less. Speaking of punishment, Melvin Gillard will probably be facing some serious punishment. He's got 4 felony charges and 2 separate incidents over his head right now in Colorado. He was charged with felony assault and misdemeanor domestic violence in Jefferson County in Colorado. This was initially reported by TMZ. He was arrested April 23rd by officers from the Lakewood Police Department when his girlfriend told officers that during an argument he put his hands around her neck and strangled her because he didn't want her to be too loud and wake others in the home. So, strangled her. They began arguing, and then when the volume raised, he grabbed her around the neck with one arm, put it under her chin, and cut off her breathing. She said he began shaking her from side to side while strangling her. Per the affidavit,
not good, Melvin. Not good.
No. Per the affidavit, when officers made contact with the alleged victim, they noticed her left eye was bruised and swollen. She told officers that the argument was about when Gillard would leave his wife to be with her. So, yeah. Go figure.
You know, it's bad enough when guys do it, but pro fighters, come on. You know, they're not.
Then, there's video of this one. TMZ also reported he was in court September 10th for the domestic violence case when he was arrested for another incident, which was an assault at a Denver bar on September 3rd. And he flat out knocked out 2 people. Or knocked down one guy and knocked out another guy with the right hand. 59-second video on TMZ in a bar. So, for that, he's being held on $10,000 cash bond for 4 charges, 3 second-degree assault charges, and 1 third-degree assault. So, I guess, with a record of 32-21-2, Melvin needs to get back in the cage and stop using his talents in manners that he's not going to only not get paid for, he's going to have to pay for. Melvin is our bad boy of the week. Oh, good. Get your life together, buddy. Fabricio Verdun not doing much better. He's suspended for two years after his positive test for a banned substance. So no Stipe Miocic rematch anytime soon. He's tested positive for trenbolone and its metabolite, epitrenbolone, following an out-of-competition test on April 25th. His official 2-year ban began on May 22nd. It's a record of 23-8-1 lifetime. Last competed in March when he faced Alexander Volkov and got defeated by 4th-round TKO.
You know, you have to wonder if this is it for him at this stage of his career.
Definitely. All right. So let's get to the events, and then we'll wrap it up. UFC, of course, has UFC Fight Night 137 from Brazil coming up Saturday. Probably going to be a crazy time. Main event there, Thiago Santos versus Eric Anders. Santos comes in at 18-6. Anders comes in at 11-1. I don't believe I've seen Anders unless I've seen him and forgot about him. But I know Santos is pretty good with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he's been around. He's fought a lot of guys. Co-main event, Carlo Pedersen, Alex Oliveira, 18-5-1. And obviously there you got looks like an American fighting a guy who's based in Brazil, and it's pretty dangerous, but I don't know anything about Pedersen either. But we do know about this guy, Smiling Sam Alvey, way up on the main card here. 33-10, fighting Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, 22-8. So big step up for Sam. This will be interesting to see this one. I'll be rooting for Sam, but I mean, this is an uphill battle for him against like Nogueira. A lot of experience, and Sam has a very basic 1-2 punching style. Doesn't throw a heck of a lot of kicks unless they're leg kicks, and he's shown in a couple instances that if you frustrate him early, he's going to have a tough fight. And I know that there was that one fight where he got kicked so hard in the ankle, it was like the end of the fight from there, and he got a decision. He ended up losing by decision. But Sam's got a tough game. He definitely punches hard, and he smiles when he gets punched, giving him the nickname. Smiles all the time, that's what gave him the nickname. But we had him on the show a couple times, and just a great guy all around. But this is a big step up, big bite to chew here. So, he's going to need everything that he's got into this one. And I'd love to see his game evolve a little bit. I like to see him be a little bit more dynamic. So hopefully he has gotten with somebody to help him do that. Because he's going to need it against a guy like Nogueira. We got Heenan Barao, 34-6, fighting Andre Ewell, 13-4. Randa Marcos, also on the card, 8-6, fighting Marina Rodriguez, defeated at 10-0. And then all visited a lot on the same card. Charles card, 23-8, fighting Christos Giagos. We got Francisco Trinaldo, 22-6, fighting Evan Dunham, who's 18-7-1. Ryan Spann, 14-5, fighting Luis Henrique Barbosa de Oliveira, who's 10-4. Sorry. Augusto Sakai, 11-1-1, fighting Chase Sherman, 11-5. Sergio Moraes, 13-3-1, fighting Ben Saunders, who's 22-9-2. Jillian Robertson, 5-2. Fighting Myra Bueno Silva, who is 4-0. And then way down on the card, we got the guys with the most experience on the card. Kaylees Latis, 27-9, fighting Hector Last Chance Lombard. He's 34-9-1. Demoted to the third fight of the night here for Hector. How far has he fallen? That's pretty crazy. Second fight, Elizu Zaleski Dos Santos, 19-5, for Lee Vendramini, who's 8-0. And then first fight of the night is a female fight, Lydia Renata Souza, 11-1, fighting Alex Chambers, who's 5-4. We had a big Mark Hunt fight. I don't know where that went. Thought I had that up here. We'll get to that in a minute, but we also have Bellator tomorrow night. Bellator 205, Antonio McKee versus John Teixeira. Da Conceição, I don't know how you pronounce that one. But McKee is 11-0, AJ McKee. Teixeira is 21-3-2. Then we got Rafael Lovato Jr., 8-0, fighting John Salter, who's 15-3. Veta Arteaga, 4-2, fighting Denise Kiholtz in a female fight, she's 2-1. We got Patricky Freire, 19-8, fighting Roger Huerta, who is 24-10-1. And just a bunch of preliminary guys, nothing too crazy on the undercard. Let's get to the boxing schedule for this weekend. And before we put the book on last weekend in boxing, I do want to mention one particular fight, since we didn't get to preview these fights last week. Right before the Canelo card, we had our Jesus fight of the week, and Jesus won.
Nice.
Jesus won big. But you're going to love the guy he fought. Finding out why Jesus won here. But
Moses?
no. Where do I get to it? Also, Derek Webster, super middleweight, got a win over Milton Nunez on the side there. That was the main event there in Delaware. Webster to 28-1 over Milton Nunez, who falls to 35-20-1. But it was Jesus Tavera in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Buckhead Fight Club, beating Anthony Hill. And Jesus gets his 10th win to go with 6 losses at welterweight. This was the main event, of course. Nobody on the entire card had more than 3 wins except for Jesus. But Jesus fought a guy named Anthony Hill, whose record was 1-24.
Wow. Who was the one is the question.
Right? Oh, now you gotta make me look it up on here. Anthony Hill. Who beat Anthony Hill? Now, who did Anthony Hill beat? When? His debut. His debut fight against Terry Butterbaugh. Not Butterbean, Butterbaugh. 10-9-3 was Butterbaugh's record. He won a majority decision.
And it's all been downhill since.
All been downhill. Only been knocked out 4 times, though. So, there's that. Anyway. And we're going to get to the results for the Mark Hunt fight as well in a few minutes here. So let me bring that up. And then we'll get back to coming week's boxing. Second. Super Samoan. I don't believe he has much more than 1 fight left, I think, on his contract. And he's 13-13 now, Mark Hunt. Had a tough loss against Alexei Olenek September 15th at UFC Fight Night 136. I'm just going to click on it, wait for it to load, and then we're going to go back to boxing here for a minute. Oh, there it is. It's already loaded. My bad. Right. Saturday night. It's a big boxing night. Saturday night's alright for fighting, right? What do we got first? I want to see what's going on in Argentina. Tony's not using his passport for that. Alright, there's one in Germany. Pretty interesting. Jack Koke, I think he's a UK guy. He's 24-3, fighting Rafael Bejaran, who's 25-2-1 for the IBF International Middleweight title. It's in Brandenburg, Germany on Saturday. Televised, but it's pretty interesting. Nothing really on the undercard there. there's a couple good fights. Let's see if I can find them. There's one in Quintana Roo, Mexico. A lot of fights there. Esmeralda Moreno. A lot of fights for a female. 35, 10, and 2 at light flyweight. She's fighting Yesenia Gomez, who's 13, 5, and 3 for the WBC World Female Light Flyweight title. Also, Diego Magdaleno is in the co-main event. He is 30 and 2, fighting looks like what could be our Jesus fight of the week so far. Jesus Cuadro, who is 16 and 3. Here's our mismatch of the week. No, not quite. 3 and 1 versus 0 and 5 for a title. No, that's not right. That can't be a mismatch. This one could be. From the Philippines, Jonathan Taconing is fighting for the WBC International Light Flyweight title. 27, 3 and 1, fighting Vince Paras. I thought this was the opposite way, but no, he's 13 and 1. 13 and 1 versus 27 and 3. That's not too lots. It's a lot more experience on the other side. Alright, let's get to the good stuff. There's one in Turkey at Cruiserweight for the Global Boxing Union World Cruiserweight title. Ferhat Arslan, who is 43, 8 and 2, fighting Pascal Ndomba, who is 23, 8 and 2. And of course, the big one from Wembley Stadium in London, Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Povetkin. And I guess I'm going to call this one our honorary mismatch of the week. Because I think that's how it's going to go. I think that's how it's going to go. Of course, all the titles are on the line, except for, I think, a couple that are out there that Joshua doesn't have. IBF, IBO, WBA, WBO, and Povetkin does have just one loss, but I think that's very deceiving. 34 and 1, and Joshua was undefeated 21 and 0. But Povetkin kind of got a little bit lucky in his last fight, I believe, and they just basically set him up with this fight as a mandatory challenger. But unless the fight's in Russia and it goes the distance, I don't think he has a chance here.
You know, I had a discussion tonight, Jim. One of my friends actually just got back from Vegas. He could not get fight tickets for the big show last week, but he was at one of the watching parties and, really had a good time. But we were talking about Povetkin, and we talked about, his fight against Vladimir Klitschko when, he came off the canvas, looked like he was out on his feet and came back and win by knockout. But then his last fight against Joseph Parker was a very pedestrian affair, and he just, seemed like he was really lacking something. And we were discussing it, and one thing that came up into my mind was Joshua, Olympic gold medalist, been a dominating figure through his whole pro career. All of his fights pretty much had been all of his fights up until the Parker fight had been a knockout. But that Klitschko fight was the first time he was seriously hurt in a fight. I mean, he was out on his feet at one point. I believe it was like the 6th round, and Klitschko let him off the hook, and he did come back and win impressively. But do you think that psychologically may have damaged him? Because now, in his mind, he is no longer invincible. When you've dominated for so long, and then you get shattered like that, when you go down, yeah, you get up and win, but now you get into a fight again, and, Parker, maybe that wasn't the biggest puncher in the world, but he definitely had some pop in his gloves. You could say, oh my God, this guy, he's undefeated, he could hurt me. Maybe I don't take as good of a punch as I thought I did. Maybe I'm not invincible, and could turn you kind of into a cautious type fighter like it did for many years with Vladimir Klitschko.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he handles this one. Obviously, I think the Fury versus Wilder fight obviously has better named people for the event selling, but this one obviously has one guy that's just way better, heads over the other. I think it's just going to be a walk over. But Povetkin might surprise me. Who knows? maybe it's an any given Sunday situation. Maybe he trains his ass off, and maybe he pulls off the miracle. Who knows? But yeah, you could be right. You could be right. He could be a little gun-shy because of the Klitschko thing. But look what it took to get him there. A guy with that much experience. A guy like Povetkin, I don't think is ever going to push him. He kind of got a gift in his last fight. They put him in against a guy they knew he was going to beat in front of his, European fans. And I think this is going to be a different story. It's right in front of Joshua's home crowd, and I don't think it's going to be a good night for Povetkin, except for when he gets his paycheck at the end of it.
Right.
We'll keep an eye on it. We'll check it out for sure. Co-main event, Luke Campbell, 18-2 at lightweight, fighting Ivan Mendy, who's got 40 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. Let's see what else we got going on. There's probably not a whole heck of a lot of other stuff. That's it, really. The big stuff. Alright, so, UFC Fight Night 136. Mark Hunt did not last very long. 1 round, 4 minutes and 26 seconds in. He got rear naked choked. I didn't watch this one at all. It was from Russia. So I didn't want the FBI to call me, so I didn't watch it. It was different timing, and I think I was working, so I didn't even catch the replays or anything. It's just been a busy time for the firewood. But, I did see some pictures of it, and I can see a guy like Olenek getting in that position and choking a guy like Hunt out. Just getting him to the ground. I mean, Hunt, he is pretty decent with his wrestling, but he's got a lot of weight to deal with, and when you're trying to knock a guy out and you get tired, I can see that happening. Getting choked out by a guy who's really good with different submissions. But Olenek actually choked out so many guys in a row with one particular submission. It's interesting to see him doing another one for once. Arm triangle. A rear naked choke instead of whatever the heck he's got that special choke that he does. Gets people every time. But good win for the Russian on home turf. We had Jan Blachowicz also getting the win over Nikita Krylov by arm triangle choke. Second round, 2 minutes and 41 seconds in. Shamil Abdurakhimov beating Andrei Arlovsky. Just can't seem to get it together again. Thought he was looking good. I was complimenting his game, the way he was using back fists, and then he just fell apart. But he lost the unanimous decision there. And then we get Alexei Konchenko winning over Thiago Alves, also by unanimous decision. Sibey Dalloway lost to the home guy, Khalid Mirzailiev, by TKO at the end of the second round. I guess he was retiring on the bench. Peter Yan beat Jin Suson by unanimous decision. And we had a split decision win for Rustam Kabilov over K. Johnson. Mirbek Taisumov beating Desmond Green by unanimous decision. The FBI should hire me to read all their Russian names for them. Magomed Ankalev also on the card, beating Marcin Prachnio by TKO. Head kicking punches. That was in the first round, 3 minutes and in. Johnson beating Adam Yendiev by arm triangle choke as well. That was in the second round, 42 seconds in. Ramazan Emaev in the second fight of the night beat Stefan Zakulik by unanimous decision, and Mirab Devalishvili beating Terion Ware in the first fight by unanimous decision. And that, folks, finally, I believe, is it for our broadcast. Marathon episode. And we don't go back 2 weeks.
That's a good one,
We're not going back 2 weeks, of course, because that would be way too much to cover. But yeah, we covered a lot of ground tonight. We got a good debate in, and could have ended a little bit cleaner with Kim getting some punches in at the end, but he got a nice shot in at the beginning, so I like that. I kind of hinted that I used that as a reminder because I knew he would remember that. I was glad that he said that he would remember the first one. Because it was pretty intense. But someday we might crack the old vault open and find that first one. But we'll hopefully get Ken on all by his lonesome one of these times and further that. But at least we left him a nice going away message. And till next time, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us and adding to our debate a little bit.
It was a pleasure, Kevin.
Fun night.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And now it's all about marketing it. We're going to put this out there and get our show on the map. We'll probably have like 300,000 listeners next week, right? All right. Thanks for
all right, guys.
hanging with us.
Let's enjoy the fight this week.
Sounds good. See you guys later.